Welcome to New York's number 2 sports show. The Yankees lose 2 out of 3 to the Detroit Tigers, including losing the rubber game in the Little League Classic in Williamsport. And for me, and probably for most Yankee fans, the storyline out of this series, and it's been one that I've discussed a lot, is Clay Holmes blows the save with an out to go in the 9th inning. It is his 10th blown save of the season. And simply put, you cannot win a championship with Clay Holmes as your closer. It's not going to happen. And we'll see when the Yankees, if and when they decide to make that change. I think it's going to take them longer than we want them to. I think eventually, he's going to force them to do so. I just can't imagine that. I think that I'm not sure where you go exactly. Now, if you want to go with one person, I guess Tommy Kahnle would probably be where I would go in the 9th inning. That's not taking anything away from Luke Weaver, but I think Weaver, he can give you multiple innings. Like, if you wanted to say, hey, we want to have one guy, Kahnle's probably that front runner. But I'm also open to the idea of going kind of with a by committee approach. And the funny thing is this, Clay Holmes, if he were like a 7th or 8th inning, versus right-handed hitters specific guy, I actually think that he'd be not bad at all. Really, I think that if you put him in that type of role, I think he'd succeed. He's not very good against lefties. He gets a lot more strikeouts versus righties, and the numbers bear that out. I think the Yankees know that, but yet they are just they're digging in so deep on him being the closer. And it's frustrating, and it's costing them games, big games, because now the Yankees are tied with the Baltimore Orioles. Both teams are 73 and 52. And it's just crazy. There's so many teams. The teams with the best records in baseball all have around the same record. Right now, it's the Phillies at 73 and 51 with the best. So if the Yankees had won this game, they technically would have been in first, which is nuts because the Yankees, they just haven't been playing great baseball. It's a pretty wide open year. And the Yankees are going to be facing the Cleveland Guardians coming up, and they have been struggling lately. They're 72 and 52. They're 2 games ahead of the Twins in the AL Central and 3 games ahead of the Kansas City Royals. That's a really big series for them, really big series for the Yankees. So that one should be interesting. But, yeah, it's just very frustrating. Mark Leiter Jr., he's been really bad. He actually came in the 10th inning. After Holmes blew the save in the 9th, the Yankees score 1 in the top of the 10th. Leiter Jr. gives up 2 runs in the 10th pretty easily, I might add. So a trade deadline that really has been almost disastrous for Brian Cashman. And it was for 2 reasons. It was lack of activity overall, I think, was one thing. And then we needed to see what happened with the players that he acquired. Now, De Los Santos is already off the roster. He was actually claimed by the Chicago White Sox, which is really ironic because that was the team that scored, 7 or 8 runs against him, leading to him being let go by the Yankees. Mark Leiter Jr., who, look, I still think there's hope for him, but he's been flat out bad. He really has been, to the point where he is not, I don't think he can be part of that high leverage crew right now. Like Jake Cousins, for my money, he should be moved up in that pecking order, and Leiter Jr. is down. And right now, in terms of just, I guess, consistency, Kahnle and Weaver, they are kind of the ones before Holmes comes in that are going to be in those biggest situations. But yeah, so and then Jazz Chisholm, which that was a good move, but he did get hurt. Fair or unfair, he did get hurt. So it has been bad, and that's kind of been a theme. Like the trade deadlines for Cashman in recent years have not been very good. And again, it's twofold. It's lack of activity in some regards, but it's also it's the moves that are being made not working. The players that you're bringing in either being ineffective or injured. And we just see it too much. And look, my thoughts coming out of that deadline were more on the negative side. If you remember in my deadline episode, and please like and subscribe, the channel would greatly appreciate it. But in that episode, I really did not think that it was a good deadline for Brian Cashman. And the thing that I think helped him was the fact that Jazz was doing so well by the time the deadline hit that it kind of softened the blow just a little bit. But still, I don't think enough was done to address it's not a good bullpen. It really isn't. And, as far as the series goes, some positives, mainly in the way that Gerrit Cole looked really good in game 1 and Marcus Stroman was good in game 3. So, look, a lot of decisions are going to need to be made as far as who's in that rotation. But, hey, give Cortez and Stroman a little bit of credit in the fact that of very recently, they have been pretty good. Look, I don't really trust them in a postseason situation, but a lot can happen, right? Injuries, who knows how Clark Schmidt is able to do coming off of his injury. So, it's still good news. At the same time, I still don't exactly trust Stroman, but you can do. Look, that all said, if he is kind of like your 5th or 6th, starting option, you can do worse than that. If we're to be fair, if we're to take everything else aside, right? And everything that Marcus Stroman is, he is able. Look, he is very hittable, but there are times where he can kind of navigate through. It's not pretty, but he went 6 shutout innings, and he was in line for the win until they blew in the ninth. As I kind of said in the last episode in previewing this Tigers series, the Yankees were unable to really score a whole lot of runs. The Tigers have pretty good pitching. They don't have very good hitting. And that kind of played itself out. Where Yankees win game 1. The final, I believe, was 3-0. Game 2, they lose 4-0. And Carlos Rodón was not good. We'll get into that a little bit more. But Rodón, who had been pretty good lately, not so good in this one. And then game 3, they lose 3-2 in 10 innings. So all low scoring. The offense was not very good. And the disappointing thing there, game 3 versus Skubal, who's one of the best pitchers in baseball, I can kind of live with that. Honestly, I'm kind of all right with that. Even though there were some missed opportunities, fine. But against Montero in game 2, for him to go 5 shutout innings like that you can't have, because I think his ERA was dreadful going into it. So that just cannot happen. Let's discuss some transactions real quick, because there were some players, actually 2 or 3, that either made their return or made their season debut. So let's just get into that real quick. And I think they're all on the hitting side. Well, actually, no, that isn't true. There's actually more. So let's just quickly pitching. Tim Mayza is actually the one that takes that Will Warren spot, which was somewhat of a surprise. Now, it's funny. I was keeping my eye on Chase and Shreve. I'm not sure if I had mentioned it in a previous episode. I might have in passing. But Tim Mayza, now Shreve's out of the organization. Tim Mayza, who was with the Blue Jays for a while, he gave up Aaron Judge's 61st home run in 2022. Mayza, who had been doing pretty well in Scranton, he actually gets the call. Not Scott Efros, not Ron Marinaccio. Those are the 2 that really come to mind. I thought it was a given it'd be one of those 2. So got to be some frustration on both of their parts. Mayza is now on the team. He actually pitched in game 2, and it was a little bit up and down, but he ends up not giving up any runs. We'll maybe get a little bit more into that. But, so now Mayza and Tim Hill, they are your current lefties. And it's like I said, it's going to be interesting because Lou Trevino, he started a rehab assignment. He might come back at some point. So they must not be impressed by what they see with Scott Efros. That's the only thing that tells me, because he's been down there for a while now, healthy. And the numbers aren't that bad. So I don't know. Not sure what's up with that. But I want to see some of these arms and what they can do. And look, Mayza included. I have no real problem with that. But it just feels like, I don't know if it's Phantom IL. I don't know what gets it done, but there are pitchers that deserve a look, whether they have been pitching well or coming off injury, right? There's Ian Hamilton, who, look, before he went down, wasn't pitching very well, but there's him. There is Nick Birdie. There's a couple other guys I can mention. So that's the pitching situation. As far as the hitters are concerned, Jose Trevino is back. Carlos Narvaez down. So Trevino started games 1 and 3. I don't love that was the case, but I'm also not surprised by it. I still want Austin Wells to really be that starter. And I kind of have a bad feeling that while it won't be 50-50, I don't know how much more. I think Wells will play more than Trevino, but maybe not as much as we'd like it to be. And I guess what I'm trying to say is let it be some situations where Wells is in there against a lefty starting. And I think a lot of it's going to depend on day game after night game. Is Trevino going to be Gerrit Cole's personal catcher? That's very possible, and that did happen in this series. So this is not me being anti-Jose Trevino. I like him. Like, honestly, like, if we're to, like, let's say we consider him a backup. That's a quality backup. Like, nothing to write home about, but that's fine. But I don't want him taking time away from Austin Wells. So there's that. Also, Oswald Peraza, he is now, I guess that had already been something that had transpired, right? Yeah, I think that did already happen in the White Sox series. He took the spot of Chisholm. And so what it is Peraza ends up starting games 1 and 3. His debut in 2024 with the big club, and he actually homers in the first game. So right now you kind of have a platoon at third between Peraza and Cabrera, and at first between LeMahieu and Rice. And the frustrating thing there is, and there's a few things, but I kind of wish that Volpe, that his spot would just be put somewhat into question. That's all, right? Whether it be Peraza or Cabrera, let them play short and third every now and then. And I know that Cabrera isn't as good against lefties. I get that, right? But Oswaldo should be in there regularly against righties, and that basically has been the case. LeMahieu, I don't know. It's kind of a 50-50 split between LeMahieu and Rice, but in all honesty, it kind of feels like LeMahieu plays more than Rice does. So LeMahieu did get a big hit in the 10th inning of the rubber game. But before that, like, he's looking pretty bad again, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise. But Ben Rice hasn't exactly taken advantage of opportunities that he's had. So there's that. But Peraza, I hope he gets a look. He's been hot in AAA. Like I said, like he homered in that first game. So, but again, it's kind of a platoon situation. And I think Volpe and even Gleyber, right? And Gleyber as well. I think that they should be just a little more at risk for losing playing time. And then lastly, Jason Dominguez. And this is kind of a bit ridiculous. He is appointed the 27th man for that Little League Classic game at Williamsport. I guess it's a rule that for these special games that you can have a 27th man on the roster. So they actually had it be Jason Dominguez, which was a tough spot to put him in because he's being sent down after the game. So he knows that, which is already kind of tough. Like, no matter how well he would have done, wouldn't have mattered. And you're going against Tariq Skubal, who is one of the best pitchers in the game. Tarek might be the better pronunciation, but he has been fantastic. AL Cy Young, probably favorite. And Dominguez is not as good as a right-handed batter. He's a switch hitter who is better as a lefty. So it's a little unfair to put him in that situation. Dominguez, it was not a good game for Dominguez at the plate. And we'll talk about, something that happened defensively too at the end of game 3. That wasn't really so good either. So, yeah. So for Dominguez, I just don't think as an organization it was fair to put him in that situation. But yeah, just kind of weird overall. Verdugo ends up taking a seat, which I don't have a problem with, but it does come out of a little bit of a surprise. And I didn't look this up, but like, I wonder how Verdugo felt about it. I mean, against the lefty, like, again, zero issue with it, but it is a special game. And here it is. He's been the starter all season. I do think the Red Sox did play. I know this kind of sounds a little bit out there, but and this is just guesswork on my part, but I want to say that the Red Sox within the last few years were in one of these Little League Classics, and therefore maybe Verdugo had already played in one of them. I know, again, it's kind of trivial, but and I'm all for the Dominguez for Verdugo thing. I'm for it, but it's just, I don't know. It put Dominguez, and maybe I'm defending him too much, but yeah, not in a great situation, and he did not perform well, which really wasn't that much of a surprise. And then plus you're kind of, I don't know, it wasn't asked. Maybe somehow Verdugo's a little bit banged up, but that didn't find that out in the post game. Anyway, so that's all of kind of the transactional news. And let's jump into this series. So look, another disappointment for the Yankees. And whereas they had been playing so well against the AL Central, think about it lately, not quite as strong. I guess I'm only speaking of, I guess, just these past couple of series, which, to be fair, wasn't horrible. It was 3-3, but the White Sox, you really should have swept them. And the Tigers, it was so there to be had to take 2 out of 3. I wasn't looking to sweep, but take 2 out of 3. So the Yankees have been kind of treading water now for the last few weeks. After that nice little stretch at the Red Sox, at the Phillies, to me, even though there's been more series wins than not, within that, it's been kind of porous. And I don't know, like, the schedule still isn't overly difficult, but you got a really big, I mean, this Guardian series, that's a big one. I mean, there's no doubt about it. They are right up there in the American League standings. That could be a playoff preview down the road. So, yeah, that's a big one. So, Gerrit Cole on the mound in this game one for the Yanks against what ended up being kind of somewhat of a bullpen game for the Tigers. Let's just put it at that. And it ends up, the bulk guy ends up actually coming into the game like the 4th inning and finishing the last. Did he come in the 4th? I believe he did. Let me just confirm that. Brant Herter, the lefty, ends up going 6 innings. Yeah. So he actually, went from the 4th and on. And the Tigers pitching, just a couple of mistakes made was the difference in this game. And for Gerrit Cole, a good outing, and he is getting better and better. That's good to see. That win improves his record to 4-2, 6 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts. A very solid line, 95 pitches. Good job by him, and the bullpen got the job done. And it's kind of interesting where the formula was basically the same in game 1 as game 3, where you get 6 shutout innings from your starter, Weaver a scoreless 7th, Canely a scoreless 8th. The difference here is that Clay Holmes in a 3-0 game in game 1 pitches a 1-2-3 inning, and then in a 1-run game in the Little League Classic in game 3, not quite the case. So as far as the lineup was concerned, Gleyber Torres leading off, and again, with the leadoff spot, it's kind of a combination of Torres and Verdugo. It's not one person. I don't love that either one is leading off. I gotta say, everything being equal, I don't know. I don't say this with any conviction, but I guess Gleyber may be somewhat preferable currently than Verdugo. But again, definitely got to be one of the worst leadoff spots in baseball, which is such a shame with Soto and Judge after that. If the leadoff guy can get on, that's a really big thing for this lineup. But anyway, Torres was leading off. As far as the lineup, no Austin Wells, Trevino returns, and then versus the lefty, or what they kind of thought it would be. I think that the Yankees anticipated Herter coming in the game sooner than he did. They had a righty opener, Brisky, and then for innings 2 and 3, Hannafy is a righty as well. So really, the first 3 innings was against a righty, but they kind of had the right-handed lineup anticipating the lefty coming in, and so that meant that LeMahieu was at first and Peraza was at third. And so anyway, let's see. Yankees do score in the first, and Gleyber singles, advances to second on an error. Soto walk, and it's funny, Soto actually, I don't believe he had a hit in the 3 games of the series. So Juan Soto's batting average, I think it still sits at least 300. It is right at 300 on the nose. So, and there were some balls hit on the screws, but it is like, that's just how it goes sometimes. Coming off of that ridiculously amazing series against the White Sox, it then kind of goes the other way against the Tigers for Juan Soto. But anyway, Soto walks, Judge lines out, Stanton walks, leads to a bases loaded 1-out situation where Alex Verdugo hits a sac fly, makes it 1-0, and then Anthony Volpe strikes out. Just to get to it right quick, I guess. Anyway, I guess let me go through some of the players and the thoughts. Gleyber, a decent series for him. It wasn't anything amazing, but in comparison to some others, the stats are probably okay for him. Like I said, Soto, a rare down series. Aaron Judge did homer in game 1. That all said, the Tigers did kind of hold him down, certainly for his standards. Giancarlo Stanton had a good game 3 statistically. And besides that, probably not a whole lot, but he looks, I think he looks pretty decent up there. Regardless of what the numbers may say. Alex Verdugo started games 1 and 2 and had that sac fly that I mentioned right there in the first inning, but not a whole lot else. Anthony Volpe, there were some infield hits But yeah, he just does not look good at all. And look, like it's been a struggle now for a while for Anthony Volpe. He's so streaky. It feels like the bad streaks prolong and the mechanics aren't quite right. And he tries to pull these outside low pitches and just bangs them into the ground. I just don't like the at-bat quality at all for Anthony Volpe at all. And there actually was a defensive blunder in this game too. Jose Trevino was fine, honestly, at the plate. I don't have a whole lot to say on the Trevino front. There are, again, that arm defensively. I mean, I think he did throw a guy out, but yeah, it's not a great throwing arm for Trevino, and that's something that I think teams will try to take advantage of. DJ LeMahieu, it wasn't good at all until he got that hit in the 10th in that third game. Peraza, good job for him. Homering in his first game of the season. Want to see him get some playing time. And then, from there, we didn't really see a whole bunch of Trent Grisham at all this series. Ben Rice, when he was in there, not a whole lot to speak of. And then Oswaldo Cabrera. Oswaldo actually had a couple of hits in game 2 where they were totally shut down. So Oswaldo continues to kind of do what he can. Although I guess in game 3 in relief, he did hit a double play in that 10th inning. So 1-0 Yanks. New pitcher for the Tigers comes in the second and third. Yanks had some chances to break something. That's the thing here. Yankees go 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position in this game. They, I believe in the series, were maybe 2 for 18. So it wasn't without some opportunities, and they just couldn't come through. So, the Yankees go 0 for 10 and still win the game 3-0. But, let's just go to the fifth. I mean, there might be some things I'm skipping over, but I want to focus more on that third game. But Oswald Peraza, he homers. First homer of the season in his first game of the season, makes it 2-0 Yankees. In the 7th, and Cole is able to kind of wiggle out of a little bit of a jam in the 6th to finish off his night. Good job for Gerrit Cole. 7th inning, I guess what was frustrating, a couple of things come to mind here, where Trevino actually ends up on second on a couple occasions in the 2nd and the 7th. And then the combination of LeMahieu, Peraza, and Torres is unable to move him around or at all, and they don't score. Luke Weaver is able to pitch a scoreless 7th inning. I should also mention Trey Sweeney made his major league debut, the former Yankee first-round pick in 2021. He got his first hit against the Yanks in that first game on a play where Gleyber Torres, they probably could have maybe called an error on Torres. They don't. But either way, what was really kind of unsettling was a runner on first, 2-out situation in the 7th. At this point, it's 2-0, and Anthony Volpe drops a very easy pop-up. Peraza probably should have been the one who took it, the third baseman, but the shortstop is always told to take charge. Volpe moves over to third and just drops the ball. It's not something we're used to seeing from him, but it was definitely a little bit concerning. You end up with a 2nd and 3rd situation, but Luke Weaver is able to get Parker Meadows to pop out, keeps the game at 2-0, and then Aaron Judge hits his 44th homer of the season in the 8th to give the Yankees a 3-0 lead. Tommy Kahnle, who's been very effective lately, he has a 1-2-3/8 inning, and then Clay Holmes in a 3-0 spot where the stakes aren't quite as high. He's able to go 1-2-3 in the 9th and look pretty good in doing so. Things are looking good for the Yankees, but game 2, Carlos Rodón is unable to continue that momentum. And that's been the problem with Rodón. When he's been bad, it happens early in games, and it kind of demoralizes the team. That said, the Yankees offense, it's unacceptable. You can't get shut out against Keter Montero, who goes 5 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. And that win improves his record to 4-5. And he leaves the game with a 5.28 ERA, meaning going in, it was almost towards 6. I think it was high 5s ERA. No pun intended. But, not good for him. And then Rodón, who had been doing better lately, he ends up throwing 90 pitches into the 4th inning, 3 1/3 innings, 7 hits, 4 runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. And, he gives up 4 runs in the first 2 innings. You just can't have that. That is something that cannot happen for Carlos Rodón. And that loss drops his record to 13-8. So in this lineup, it was the left-handed hitter version of the one from the night before, although Gleyber Torres batted leadoff. So that's what I'm saying, is that we've seen different situations where Verdugo has batted leadoff versus a lefty and Gleyber has batted leadoff versus a righty. So it's kind of one of the two. And sometimes there is a rhyme or reason, but it's not so obvious. But yeah, Wells back in the lineup. Rice in at first, starting at least. LeMahieu would pinch hit. And then Oswaldo Cabrera starts at third. And Oswaldo would get 2 of the 4 Yankee hits. Pretty bad. And only 1 extra base hit for the Yankees. It was a Judge double in the 9th inning. So, in the first, a 2-out. And that's the thing, too. A lot of 2-out damage against Rodón. Malloy with a ground rule double. And then Colt Keith with an RBI single to give the Tigers a 1-0 lead in the first. In the second, Torkelson leadoff double, but then he gets 2 outs, Rodón. And then it's an RBI single for McKinstry, walk to Vierling, and a 2-run double for Andy Ibanez. Makes it 4-0, and that was it. 4-0 Tigers in the second, and that was all she wrote. And yeah, Montero didn't even really face that much pressure. Jake Cousins does a nice job. He comes in the 4th inning, ends up going an inning and 2/3, no hits, no walks, 2 strikeouts, so good job for him. Tim Meza with a little bit of an adventurous 6th inning, a leadoff triple by Spencer Torkelson, but then on what was a wild pitch, or I guess what could have been a wild pitch, the ball gets away from Austin Wells, and a very close play at home, which I thought he was safe, but Torkelson is out at home on a play from Wells to Meza. So good hustle by Meza, puts the tag down, and I guess it beat Torkelson, and then Meza is able to get the next couple of outs. So ends up kind of starting out bad, but ending up not so bad. So there's that. Then in the 7th, Mark Leiter Jr. comes on, and not a leadoff double for McKinstry. Then bad base running by McKinstry leads to him being out on fielder's choice, and then a line out and a strikeout. So you're hoping that at that point, Leiter Jr. was kind of maybe starting to come around. We would find out that would not be the case in Game 3. LeMahieu pinch hits in the 8th for Rice, grounds out. Just kind of, I don't know. I just don't like LeMahieu's role on this team, but I think it's more than it should be, but I digress. 8th inning, Tim Hill, a scoreless inning, not 1-2-3, but scoreless. And then Jason Foley, who I believe is the Tiger closer. He comes on in the 9th, leadoff double for Judge, strikeout for Wells, and I will say, pretty bad at bat by Wells where he swings at ball 4. And maybe if he walks, something opens up. Stanton lines out, Verdugo walks, and then eventually Volpe, who was not the tying run was on deck, but Volpe kind of gets into one, warning track power to left. But it's caught. And the Yankees get shut out. They lose 4-0, and so the rubber game is going to happen in the Little League Classic. And Yankees were almost able to sneak this one out, but it was not to be. Jason Dominguez, like I said, he's called up for this game. He starts in left and bats 5th, and that was kind of interesting too. Kind of figured that Dominguez would play center and Judge in left, but no, they go with Dominguez in left field. Trevino gets the start against the lefty. Don't love it. Kind of understand it, but really don't love it. And what else? LeMahieu starts. Peraza starts. Again, it is typically the lineup versus lefties, Verdugo on the bench. A lot of things that I've already discussed. But Marcus Stroman was good. 6 innings, 4 hits, no earned runs, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts. Very strong outing for him. And that's now 2 in a row that have been good. And then Tariq Skubal goes 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts. So like a good outing for Skubal, but not overly dominant. 4 walks, 5 strikeouts for him is not great, but the Yankees really weren't able to take advantage of some opportunities that they had. So let's discuss it. And really, it was a lot of pitching, not a whole lot of offense to speak of. And let's see, where was the first real chance? There really weren't many of them, honestly. The 5th inning is where things get a little interesting. Parker Meadows is up with a runner on first and 2 out. He hits a double into the gap, but a really nice relay from Judge to Volpe to Trevino, and they get Jace Young, the younger brother of Josh Young on the Texas Rangers, who looked pretty good actually in this series in his debut. He started at home. And he's not the quickest runner. He was kind of stumbling a little bit, and they call him out at the plate. Not a great job on the tag by Trevino, but Detroit didn't challenge it, and so he's out. So the score remains tied at 0. And Gleyber Torres, to start the sixth, Torres walk, Soto walk, and then Judge double play. So you're thinking, all right, like a great opportunity maybe gone to waste, but then there's a wild pitch and with Stanton up, and Gleyber Torres scores. It was close, but Torres is able to get in there, give the Yankees a 1-0 lead, and so then Stroman pitches a scoreless sixth inning, which I wasn't sure whether it was worth having him finish inning. They do that. Let's go to the bottom of the seventh. Luke Weaver comes on. 1, 2, 3 inning for Luke Weaver. Looked pretty good. Then the bottom of the eighth, Tommy Kahnle. 1, 2, 3 inning. He looked pretty good. And then let's go to the bottom of the ninth. Clay Holmes comes on. And look, would the Yankees have kind of snuck out of there with the win? Yes. But it wasn't as if it wasn't as if like it was one they didn't deserve. It's just, look, Skubal versus Stroman would have been nice, to win the series, to win, in the Little League Classic. But Clay Holmes, I did not feel good about Clay Holmes. Just didn't. In this situation, to me, it was ripe for him to blow a save, and that's exactly what happened, unfortunately. Kerry Carpenter strikes out to start, so it's looking okay. But then Colt Keith gets a double to the opposite field to set the Tigers up. Then Holmes strikes out the righty Torkelson. And the reason why I specify that is because Holmes versus righties is a lot more effective than against lefties. So it's Jace Young. And keep in mind, could they have maybe pitched a little carefully to him with Sweeney on deck? They could have. I don't have a huge problem with it. I mean, Young would have been like the lead run. Young and Sweeney, to be fair, they're both young players. Like, to distinguish between the two is unfair. So I'm not even going to go there. But Young is able to slap a single to left field to tie the game up. Dominguez came up firing, and Keith was safe. Pretty good throw by Dominguez, but Keith beat it, and it's 1-1. And then Holmes strikes out Sweeney. So he actually struck out the side, but he blows his 10th save of the season. That's the most blown saves by a Yankee since, I believe it was Dave Righetti in 1987, I think was the stat. And he had 13 in 87. I think that's what it was. So the 10th inning comes around, and DJ LeMahieu actually gets a single to start it out, RBI single to the opposite field to give the Yankees a 2-1 lead off of Bo Brisky. But then Oswaldo hits a double play, which was tough, and then Gleyber strikes out. So it's 2-1 going to the bottom of the 10th. Again, Clay Holmes, that's the big story for me. But Mark Leiter Jr., not that far behind as far as he's been really, really bad. And he was bad again in the 10th. Zach McKinstry matches the LeMahieu RBI single right off the bat, makes it 2-2. And then a steal for McKinstry, which was big. A close play, not a great throw by Wells. Volpe did everything he could to get the tag, but I guess was unable to do so, and McKinstry comes in safe. And then Parker Meadows is able to get the walk-off RBI single to give the Tigers the 3-2 win in the Little League Classic and give them the series win. And what was odd about this was Jason Dominguez. I don't know why he was hesitating to throw it home. There was no reason to do so. Like, the runner on first really means basically nothing. The lead run is running from second to eventually home. And if Dominguez doesn't hesitate, they might get him out at the plate. But it's funny. I was kind of rooting for McKinstry to go home because to me, like, if Dominguez is doing what he should be doing, then I think they might have gotten him out. So I don't know what was going through his head there. But, yeah, overall, not a great game for Dominguez. And, yeah, Mark Leiter Jr. loses it there. The bullpen does not come through. And the Yankees lose it 3-2. Just a tough loss. So 73-52 is the Yankees' record. They are tied with the Baltimore Orioles. And now the Yankees will go home for a six-game homestand, 3 against Cleveland, 3 against Colorado. So the Colorado one, on paper, you'd think that the Yankees should do well there, but who the hell knows? But the Guardians series, like, Cleveland is coming in pretty cold. And it's a big series for them, just as it is for the Yankees, as the AL Central is tightening up between Cleveland, Minnesota, and Kansas City, and the Yankees and Baltimore. That's a neck-and-neck race as well. So the pitching probables. Matthew Boyd, the lefty, against Luis Gil. Matthew Boyd, quite honestly, I didn't even really realize that he was on Cleveland. He started one game and actually did pretty well in it. And that was against the Cubs. So maybe he can, we'll see what happens there. This is someone who used to be good in the past and a lefty. Keep that in mind. Yankees do struggle more against lefties, so that could be a thought process there. And then the other games in that series are as follows. Game 2 will be Nestor Cortez for the Yankees, and the Guardians have not announced a starter for Game 2. And then Game 3 will be Gerrit Cole against Gavin Williams. Young righty for the Guardians. So, not like again, we don't know who's pitching Game 2 for Cleveland, but not an overly imposing situation starters-wise. Then again, I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm expecting more lower-scoring games. The Guardians haven't been scoring many runs lately, but I think that their pitching's been decent. So we'll see what happens. It's gonna be interesting and gonna be a big series. Like one of the bigger ones that they probably had in a while. I don't know if it's gonna have the feel of it necessarily, but again, this is a team that has a very similar record. So Yankees, coming off of a disappointing end to this road trip, one in which it should have gone a lot better than it did. And yeah, they lose to the Tigers. They lose the series. They blow it in the ninth inning. Clay Holmes, 10 blown saves. They got to do something to fix this, because if they don't, I don't think it's going to be very successful for the Yankees, and they will hope for better results as they head home to take on the Guardians.